Today, I want to share two ideas with you. The first is a question. What if we saw school as a story rather than a system? The second is a challenge. We can always change the story. When I was a seventh grade English teacher, my students would come into the classroom and see a word of the day on the whiteboard. Their job was to run over to the side of the classroom where we had these big old dictionaries, lug it back to their seat, find the right word, write down the definition, draw a weird drawing that resembled it, and then write the craziest, zaniest sentence they could using the word correctly. And this was all well and good and fun. And then one year, our school moved to a one-to-one tech situation, and every kid came in with an iPad. And on that first day, one kid in the front row raised his hand, "Mr. Reynolds." "Yes." "Wouldn't it be easier if we just looked up the word on the iPad?" "Yes." 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 "Mr. Reynolds, wouldn't it be faster if we looked up the word on the iPad?" "Yes." 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 "Can we do it?" "No." 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 Why not? Because you would miss bumping into your classmates. You would miss lugging that heavy dictionary back to your seat. You would miss letting your fingers run over the dried ink or the curled pages of all those wrong but still beautiful words like archetype, perspicacious, resplendent. In short, you would miss the story. See, a system is designed to get us from A to B as efficiently as possible. No tangents, no twists, no turns. But a story is designed to get us from A to Z with as many twists, turns, and tangents as we can handle. And students learn from an early age that school is a system. Ask any high schooler if they're reading the books assigned to them in English class. And when I taught high school, like many of my colleagues, I decided to design the most intricate quizzes possible to make sure they were trying to read and not game the system. So I'd ask questions like, in Macbeth, Act 3, Scene 2, what color shoelaces was Macbeth wearing? Blue? Wrong, there weren't any shoelaces. Students learn from an early age that school is a system meant for efficiency. And we see the results of that way of thinking. Over the past 7 years, a couple of classes that I teach each semester have been conducting a large research study. And I send these classes out in the field all across campus to ask a wide cross-section of people one very simple but meaningful question. Can you name a significant place in your life? That's it. Students come back to the classroom and they write all the places, all these beautiful, significant places on the board. And after 7 years, we've gotten 2,800 results. 2,800 meaningful, significant places. And of those 2,800, just 3 mention the word school. 3 out of 2,800. Now, you might be tempted to think, well, that's probably because people are thinking of really unique, abnormal places. But some of the most common responses include places like my backyard, the library, the playground, the basketball court, my kitchen. In other words, people do think of very normal, mundane places, but they are places that hold immense significance. Why? That's only half the story, because if we go out and ask people to name a significant person in their lives, guess what they always bring back? My teacher, my 3rd grade teacher, my 7th grade teacher, my 11th grade biology teacher. In other words, when we ask people to think in terms of relationship, they almost always think of a teacher. But school is always left out. School represents a system for them, not a story. And what do we do when we find ourselves stuck inside of a system? We can zoom out and try to change the story. About 13 years ago, my wife and I, Jennifer, did just this. We had our first son. He was 2 years old, and we were feeling like we were caught in this A to B system meant for efficiency, feeling bad every time we made a mistake or didn't measure up. And so we decided to make a big change and try to create a new story. We gave away almost everything we owned and traded in paychecks for student loans. We went abroad to York, England. My wife would pursue a PhD in sociology and do some adjunct teaching, and I would be a stay-at-home dad and a best-selling novelist. It was going to be awesome. until it was not. I remember going to put my 2-year-old son down in his crib thinking this would be my writing time and slowly and trepidatiously walking out of the room only to hear that floorboard and that terrifying sound, Daddy, you no go, I no nap, we no do this. And the writing time was gone. But I did manage to get some writing done that year, those 3 years, only none of it was published. I got rejection after rejection. And so I remember one morning starting a paper route. I thought it would be good for my mental health to get out of the house, do something physical, and maybe earn a few pounds to help pay for food. And each day I did this paper route, my self-pity grew, and I thought, Luke, what are you doing? You're 32 years old. You have a job that you had when you were 11 years old. You're wearing fleece pants and you haven't shaved. What have you become? And I remember one particular morning in York, England, we had gotten a big ice storm, very much like the one we got today. And I remember doing my paper route, walking across these icy sidewalks, slipping and sliding and falling and cursing under my breath. And then I heard that same cry, though this time not as terrifying. Daddy! And I looked around to see my son and my wife, Jennifer, making their own slippery way up the sidewalk. And when they reached me, my wife uttered the words that totally transformed the way I'd been living this York, England experience. See, I was still seeing it as a system. And instead, when she reached me, she said, Luke, today we'll do the paper route together. There was no success. But all of a sudden, I felt like the letter B was blown out of the water. I stopped trying to get from A to B as efficiently as possible, and we went way deep into the alphabet to live a story that was far more significant. We can do that with our schools. The seeds that were planted 13 years ago in York, England are still alive today. We have 3 more sons, but our son who was 2 when we went is now 15. And just one evening this past winter, we were going to go out to a movie. He's a lover of film. And so we were going to go out to a movie, and I said, hey, I got an idea. What if we parked a couple miles away from the theater? And he looked at me with that quizzical way that only a teenager can, as if you have no clue what life is about. And he said, well, then we'd be 2 miles away. And I said, yeah, we'd be 2 miles away. Then he got it. He said, then we'd end up walking 4 miles. I said, yeah, we'd end up walking 4 miles. It wouldn't just be a movie. We'd have a story to experience together. And in our schools, there are some big ways we can do this and some small ways. Some of the big changes we need to make when we zoom out and stop seeing school as a system include plot level changes to write a dramatically new story. Things like paying teachers for the heroism they conduct every day on the front lines, paying them what they're worth. Things like smaller class sizes so teachers can build those meaningful relationships that create stories. Things like equitable funding across zip codes so that there is no more achievement gap and students, no matter where they go to school, deserve a good education. But there are also small plot changes we can make. Not long ago, I remember going to a math classroom and watching the math teacher tell her students, today we're putting all the textbooks to the side of the room, and instead we're going to play an escape room game. And to get out of this room, you have got to use the correct equations and mathematical formulas that we have been learning. Now, you'll be in your groups and you'll have a certain amount of time, but you've got to get from station to station or else. And all of a sudden, as the textbooks went to the side of the class, students' eyebrows rose and they engaged in a story, not just a math lesson. And this is what we can do in big ways and in small, in our schools and in our lives. We can zoom out and let go of the desire to go from A to B as efficiently as possible, and we can ask ourselves, what would it look like to go from A to Z? To focus not on success, but on significance, and to tell a good story. Thank you.